every time I was invited to speak, I write something. When they had the seminar in Parliament, and they gave me the time to speak for half an hour, I wrote 50 pages. And this one, when Chin Huan asked me to speak, here is in the keynote address. Tonight, I was thinking that it was all right to make use of what I said in Parliament a couple of weeks back. But then when I look at the agenda, it looked different. So I have to change. Just 2 nights ago, I did the right thing. And I end up writing 26 pages. And he said, you have 25 minutes to deliver them. So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think I could deliver my speech in 25 minutes. So that is why I always have this one as the cushion to hold back on my laptop. The only thing I knew what to do with the laptop is to write in it. It's quite a long paper, but very interesting topic. Parliament as drivers of change. But you must remember, Minister Adinda Dato Sri Azalina, because that's the way she addressed me, sometime uncle and sometime brother. So I don't know which one is the right one.
Depends on the occasion, sir.
So I'm, just follow her current. You see, if you look at the Parliament of England as models of the development of any parliament in the Commonwealth, changes in the Parliament of England took 100 years. The first period, with the government, advisor of the king, royal advisors, from the period of 400 AD to 1115, the king of Normandy, and from that period to another period of 600 years, a couple of 100 years. The parliament then was only advisors to the government until 1414, when it became a legislature. When the parliament became legislature in England in 1400, it took another couple of 100 years to change itself, because it has always been the problem of changing parliament, opposition from the king. So here we don't have a king to oppose us, but the executive. And we trust the executive to change the way parliament operates. Can you do that? Can you take away their authority and tell them, okay, you don't have this, we are going to observe you doing this? Because Parliament, if you look at it, a couple of functions of Parliament, it may be very few, but there are a lot of things to be done. And sometimes our member of Parliament don't even know what they are supposed to do. So that is why they just quarrel among themselves in Parliament. If you don't believe me, you attend Parliament once. Then you can see how they quarrel from one side to the other, because they simply don't know what they are supposed to be doing there. So with that background, I think Professor Wong Chin Huat, your driver of change has got to be from outside, not from within. Unless people like Dato Sri Azalina agree, because she's the one going to carry all the works. I can only make suggestion. Now, like I said to you, I have 20 pages of speech. If I were to read that, please don't tell me about the time. But then I'm not going to read to you, so that's what I told Professor Chin Huat just now. I will only read the list of what are the things that I would think, I suggest that ought to be done. I'm sure Adinda, Datuk Sri Azalina will have a sleepless night to remember, because there will be a lot of changes in Parliament, Constitution, a lot of changes in law, introduction of new laws in order to accommodate the changes in Parliament itself. Now you must remember, Professor Smith, Stanley Smith says, what are the functions of the members of Parliament? He says, one is to pass the law. Second, to pass the budget. And to make sure that executive is accountable to the money that we allow the executive to spend. This dates back to 1600. During the time when they say you can collect the money, but the moment it is with us, you cannot spend it without our consent. That's what Parliament told the executive, the king at the time. So Parliament has got to pass the budget, and then we got to control and see how they spend the money that we allow them to spend. And how are we going to do that? And I read exactly what Professor Smith, Stanley Smith said. To make law, including pass of budget, to determine and pass the control of budget. Third, to make constructive suggestion on national policy and oversee its implementation. The fourth, only the constituency function. But then unfortunately, like what has been said by many, we spend a lot more time in the constituency than we do think about what to do with the nation, especially in creating law, policy, oversee the government spending the money that we gave them to allow them to spend, and how effective is the scrutiny. It is under the Constitution. Under Article 43, bracket 3, the Cabinet is accountable to Parliament. Meaning, it is not the executive that comes first. The executive is subservient to the Parliament, even though during the Cromwell time in the 1700, the first among the equal is a Prime Minister. But then Parliament is superior in terms of the three branches of the government, the separation of powers. So, based on that, every action of executive is subject to Parliament approval and endorsement. So, based on that, we have to establish ourselves first, our housekeeping. Now, we will be surprised to our friend from Europe, from Northern Ireland, to know that the Parliament of Malaysia still exists as it is today, just like we had existed in 1948, before independence. Because we don't have Parliament independent administrative act to give us the independence of Parliament. So all the stuffing in Parliament, all the money that we spend in Parliament is controlled by the executive. And that is why we have to think of something. We have not complied with the Federal Constitution. Article 62, 63 gave us the freedom and immunity, and yet we abandoned it since independence. Except during the period 1963, when we had the Administration Act Parliament to 1993. But simply because of the failure of administration and understanding how to manage it, we allow the executive to take back the independence, surrender our independence to the executive again, and the club, the council, as I will use the term, this is the secretary of Dewan Negara, secretary of Dewan Rakyat, is now the officer of the Public Service Department. So are all the officers of Parliament, from the driver right up to the Secretary of Parliament, are the staff of the Public Service Department. So where is the independence under Article 62? And therefore, we have to first go back to the very basic. We have to have the Parliament Administration Act reintroduced again. Second, we have the law. We call it very powerful sounding law. We call it the Privilege and Powers Act 1952. It truly is 1952. It never been amended. It was revised in 1988. Only the name changed from Ordinance to Act 1988. Not a single word been changed. And it was a thinking of 1952, the history of which was not so glamorous, and we are still using it today. And that ties the hand of all the speakers and the President of the Senate from enforcing it. So this is why, okay, Parliamentary Service Act got to be reintroduced. Then the second one, the House of Parliament Privilege and Powers Act, either reintroduced or amended, overhaul it. And another thing, we go back to basics. Standing orders and rules of the Dewan. Both Dewan Rakyat and Dewan Negara. It was corrupted in 1956, before independence, for the Federal Legislative Council, and it never been overhauled, except a little bit of changes in 1959, after the election of 11 September 1959, the establishment of Dewan Negara to copy the Dewan Rakyat's rules and get to Dewan Negara and change it. And believe it or not, I can remember the term in Dewan Rakyat. I can also remember in Dewan Negara because there's no difference. The only thing is -1. For example, the setting up of the Special Select Committee under 81(1) rules of the Dewan Rakyat. But in Dewan Negara, 80(1), just -1. Similarly, all the provision in the rules still remain the same, and it's antiquated rules of 1956 we are still using. And can you imagine Parliament of the Commonwealth, include the English Parliament itself, have changed so much since 1960s to today, and we have not changed. And who is conservative here? We call English very conservative. We will be surprised. Malaysians are worse conservative when it comes to administration. It is two things that could happen. Either we didn't realize it, we didn't know what to do, because every time we sit and get appointed, we think that we are there, we didn't have to look at anything, we are sitting in our comfort zone, we didn't have to change. So that's it. But have we fulfilled the constitutional requirement? We have not. Personally, I think we have not. And that is why the formation of Commission for Parliamentary Service we can't establish, for the discipline of service in the Parliament and the finance control of Parliaments, to determine its own expenditure and the right to hire and fire staff, to discipline its staff, to enforce the freedom to decide on related function, who will do it. You believe I was in the cold storage of the government for 7 years, from 1993 to 1998. I couldn't go out anywhere at all. I wanted to go to Iraq after the war to see what happened there. I wrote a letter, rejected, because I had a bad name. The reason for the bad name, because I opposed the government bill, the gambling bill, in 1993. So, the first member of Parliament, Barisan Nasional, 1993, opposed government bill. That caused a belah bagi or division in Parliament. We lost, but still, my name, my stigma, stay there for 6-7 years. That is why I put also the freedom to decide on our own. Every time my name being put up, somebody somewhere delete my name, because this bad guy shouldn't go anywhere. And Parliament could even decide on that. Parliament had got a lot of overseas function. Now, I have just been sworn in on the 19th. I have been asked to go to Australia, invited to go to Ghana, and asked to go to London. Just a couple of weeks. Official function. And yet, during the period of 1993, I couldn't go. Simply because the executive decide my fate, whether I can go or I cannot go. Parliament couldn't decide that. Where is the independent Parliament we are talking about? Therefore, that must be reintroduced. Okay, introducing the bill, Dato Sri Azalina, Parliament Privilege and Powers Act 1952. We have to either replace or just produce the amendment to enable the provision in the law to introduce the ethic for members of Parliament, to avoid what we can see now happening in Parliament. Instead of debating substantive matters, they quarrel among themselves, go down into the level of a gutter politics. Enabling provision to provide punishment for various breach of privileges, which is not found in our law. The amount was stated 1,000 ringgit, $1,000 in 1952. I still remember when the late Kapil Singh was blocked from entering Parliament by 4 UMNO youth. And they were brought before the Committee of Privilege and found to be breach of the privilege of Parliament from stopping Member of Parliament from entering Parliament at the time. And then they were all fined 1,000 ringgit. I think they must open like Bujang Lapok, their shoe, whether got money 1,000 ringgit under their shoe or not. Because the 1,000 ringgit is nothing anymore to them. Selangor already changed to 2,000 ringgit, 20,000 ringgit. Nothing wrong with it because it doesn't disqualify the Member of Parliament, because the disqualification rules under 48, Article 48, Maha, you are nodding your head, I know, because disqualification only affecting Member of Parliament if it is inflicted by court, not by the discipline committee. So we need not have to worry about the amount of money to inflict. At least we make fun for Member of Parliament. Then we have a little bit of money to do something. And also, I would like to suggest that to empower Parliament to call the government to table and debate papers in Parliament. the intention to enter into bilateral or multilateral treaty, agreement, arrangement, or withdraw from such treaty, agreement, arrangement with any foreign countries or individual group or individual. You know why I'm saying this? Because of the latest experience. When Dato Sri Anwar signed the agreement with Jokowi, there's hue and cry because we didn't know what the heck is going on. If we table in Parliament, at least it's being debated, people will know, public will know about it. So we have to do something. We have to empower Parliament to call the government for the settlement of any dispute, just like the withdrawal of Batu Putih case by the Prime Minister in 2018. At least member of Parliament will know exactly what is happening because it's a major national matter. To amend the standing orders and rules, our friend Keeping Time, give me a little bit of allowance, please. Provision of rule to respect of sitting of Parliament during recess summoned by Yang di-Pertuan Agong. Remember, Yang di-Pertuan Agong called for the sitting of Parliament during the period under COVID. We didn't sit. And then when they did sit, it was the whim and fancy of Prime Minister. Because there's no provision to support the call by Yang di-Pertuan Agong under the rules. Only the Prime Minister can call for emergency meeting under Rule 11. So we should have a rule when the Yang di-Pertuan Agong exercise his right under the Constitution to call for the Parliament sitting, to arrange for the sitting based on what the Agong wants. But then the Prime Minister at the time, instead of tabling what the Yang di-Pertuan Agong wants, he tabled something else. So that created a little misunderstanding to the public as well. So we should have a provision. We can't blame the government at that time, because to the government, that was the best decision to make. So if we have that provision, at least you can't fall back on something that we can get excuse from. Introduce the Joint Committee in Parliament to provision for the rule tabling private member bill. We have not a provision for private member bill. The impeachment of Prime Minister, we don't have in our rules. We should also introduce that. It's been done in England in 1800, and also the last one, Tony Blair. If I'm not mistaken, 2004, Tony Blair, it was. We don't have a procedure. We can't do it. Not in Malaysia. We should have that in our rules. The vote of no confidence and vote of confidence. Vote of confidence, of course, the government will table, the minister didn't have to put no notice. And if this private member to table include the leader of opposition to table that, then you will be subject to general rules that the government function must be given priority, and then you will never see the light of the day for this motion. So we should have the provision to allow that kind of tabling of the bill for impeachment, table the bill for private member bill, to be given a time. The private member bill ought to be given some allowances, some technical advice from the government and Parliament to allow private members to come up with a bill. It may not be successful. Like in England, only 30% successful. The rest are not. But at least we gave them the chance. There's a procedure to follow. Well, the other suggestion I have. In England, we have at one time 1,900 members of the House of Lords during 2009, when the Labour government would want to abolish the House of Lords. And we have 650 members of House of Commons. And here, we have only 70 members of the Senate and 222 members of Dewan Rakyat. So I'm suggesting that we got to amend Article 45, put in additional number, because it is already there in the Constitution to provide for direct election to the cabinet, to the Senate. While keeping that appointment by the Agong 40, the election from the state 2, and then we can have another one. And in addition to that, I was suggesting there ought to be 4 from youth group, from university, institution of higher learning. Those who won the union election from universities, we brought in into the parliament to become senator, to represent the youth voices in the Senate. And then 6 from the legal fraternity, Bar Council of Malaysia, 4 Advocate Association of Sarawak and Law Society of Sabah, to be given seat. Those become president directly, be appointed senator. Then we have a bigger scope and wider group of specialists. And then Article 45 bracket 2 ought to be implemented responsibly. That is, to follow the provision of the Constitution itself. That is, to only choose, when advising the Yang di-Pertuan Agong for appointment, the people from the specialist group, those government officers of long service and exemplary service. In the specialist area, the history that we inherit since 1909, when the Federal Council was established in the Federal Third-Place State. People from the union, from certain segment, the enfranchised group of people, from the small group who couldn't go into parliament, get elected, be appointed to the senators, like Penan, orang asli, OKU, should be given the option to go in. So, of course, I got a notice of 3 minutes. I will go very quickly. The Political Funding Act, please. Those 3. I'm sure you know this one. The Political Funding Act. Another one, the fixed term parliament, to complement the anti-hopping law, because that is the only one that we stop. Then we can allow a minority government to continue their work. Only parliament can decide, like in England, when the election could be done. If the parliament by 2/3 majority agrees election ought to be had, then we have election. Otherwise, minority government rules. And the other one, the anti-hopping law, there are several states we have not implemented. We would like to see if the state do not want to comply, please use your arm twisting method. There's a provision under the Constitution that the federal can introduce the law to harmonize the anti-hopping law so that all the states will have it. Because there are in some minor politicians we want to hope so that we don't want to comply with the request of the federal yet. Of course, the fixed term for Perdana Menteri, 10 years, we have been talking so much about it. And finally, I would like to suggest that the government should also establish a legislative academy for legislature, parliament, so that we can train members of parliament, train adun, train politicians, senior government officers to really understand what parliament is all about. As you remember, in 2014, I gave a talk to lawyers in AG chambers, 300 over of them. And the AG at the time, Tan Sri Gani Patail, asked me, why don't you write book as a guideline to all the government officers to understand the role and function of Parliament, which they are so blurry about, she said. So I didn't write that book. So I'm suggesting that we should have an academy to teach people about politics, legislature, and the role of Parliament, and the role how to become member of Parliament, and how to become senior government officers in supporting Parliament. So, ladies and gentlemen, twice my time up. I don't blame him, otherwise he got a problem from his bosses at the back and in front. So I think that's the 26 pages that I have. And all in summary, thank you very much for listening, and then I will try to make it short.